it's their desperate plea and cry to be heard and understood, because it's one thing to just hear someone yelling at you. It's a whole other thing to understand what they're saying in that moment. What's up, peoples? It's your bartenders, Mistah Z
and your boy Omega.
So we have a sudden change to our topic today. We know we mentioned sports entertainment last week, but some things have come up to guide us to our topic for this episode.
We dive into the hard world of triggers. In a time where cancel culture is rising, we thought it would be good to understand what sparks these movements, how to recognize them, and eventually learn how to respond versus react.
As every episode, we want to thank all of you for listening. We truly appreciate you taking the time to tune into these conversations.
Special thank you goes out to our newest Patreon subscribers, Aaron Yip and Oscar Meja, for their support of the show. Every little bit helps us reach our goals to invite more high-profile guests and create bonus content like our bonus episode, Thirsty, coming to Patreon.
And if you want to join in on our conversation outside of this cast, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at Have a Drinkcast, and make sure to use that hashtag HADcast.
Remember, this is always a conversation. If you want to voice your opinions or even suggest a topic for our episode, feel free to join our Discord as well. The link will be in the description.
And please, if you like what we're doing here, share us with your friends, family, neighbors, hell, even your family friend that shows up to your house unannounced, raiding your fridge when they know they should be home quarantined. Yeah, your referrals mean a lot to us, as that's how we gain more listeners.
Thank you again.
And get prepared to sit,
think,
and have a drink.
Welcome to the Have a Drink podcast. Enjoy the episode.
Yup. Peace. What's up, peoples, and welcome back to another episode of the Have a Drink podcast, where we invite you to sit, think, and have a drink. It's your bartenders, Mistah Z.
And your boy Omega.
What's up? What's up? So today we were going to talk about triggers. Yeah. We kind of flipped the script from what our normal conversation was going to be for today, from sports entertainment to triggers, because, you know, some things have kind of like been happening in the world, and, you know, kind of to roll off of our previous show of cancel culture. You know, part of cancel culture, you know, it starts from somebody being triggered. Mm-hmm. And so it got that ball rolling on, like, what is a trigger? I feel like that's like the first question we should answer.
Okay. Well, did a little research, and looking at how to spot your emotional triggers, they kind of explained it in this way. They said an emotional trigger is any topic that makes us feel uncomfortable. Right? These emotional triggers are telling us which aspects in our life we might feel frustrated or unsatisfied with. As mentioned above, it can vary in each person because we are all struggling with something different. So that came from Mariana Plata from How to Spot Your Emotional Triggers, which is a Psychology Today article.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I looked that up is because I was honestly thinking about it too. I was like, well, what is a trigger? Like, I've said this before, and I have an idea in my mind of what a trigger is, but I thought it would be pretty good to finally have like some concrete evidence or a legit definition of what it is.
Right. Something that I had actually looked up as well, you know, it was talking about, you know, where triggers come from, mm-hmm. and kind of, you know, it being part of our past experiences. You know, as just people, you know, when we're young, like say we're 3 years old or we're 6 months old, some part of us that we formed at that time was used to handle that particular situation. So now when something happens to us as an adult, now we're triggered by it, and we're using that 6-month-old or 3-year-old part of us to handle the situation that's happening now.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing too, because I think about like even growing up as a kid, like getting hit by my mom, right? Like my mom used to beat the dog mess out of me sometimes, you know, And I mean, which is very, I hate to use it like this, but I guess in a sense it's pretty common in a lot of black households. But, is that capital punishment. Yeah, I remember my mom was, she was backhand me, slap me, and all that stuff before. But then it's just crazy. It's just like one time in the middle of a conversation, all she did was just move her hand up, and I flinched.
Mm.
No, she wasn't mad. There was nothing going on. She just moved her hand up like this in the middle of saying something, and I flinched. Like I was like, "Oh snap!" Like she's gonna hit me, and I was like, "Yo!" Like, and then it made me feel like bad, like deep down.
Mm.
Like I felt like I did something wrong, or like I was in trouble, and I was like, "Dude, like that's terrible." I'm like, I don't want nobody to ever make me feel like that.
No. Ooh, thank you for sharing that. Triggers come in many forms. We were
Yeah.
saying like, what is a trigger? Like it's that emotional response to an issue or a problem or something that you're having. Now, a lot of it, much of it, is stems from trauma, some form, shape of trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like it could be anything that is like a sight, a sound, a smell, um, an image,
Yep.
a phrase or whatever, right? And it's crazy is because it's like there's so much trauma that everybody's dealt with, that has gone through, that is never dealt with, which
Right.
then in lies leaves triggers for us.
Right.
And they can be emotional triggers too. Like emotional triggers are really hard. Like it could be you associate something with a feeling, and that feeling will never ever go away.
Mm.
It may be dull. You may have processed it, went through it, forgiven it, or understood it and forgave it, but it still kind of lingers around or still kind of hurts.
Right. It gives me a better sense of when say someone has an issue with a TV show or a song because they're speaking about something that is triggering, like rape,
Yeah.
or they're showing a form of it. It triggers even if they've never experienced it. It's interesting to see that like it can still trigger that fear response, that emotional response. It can trigger anger, because that's the thing. Like triggers aren't necessarily people getting upset or like flinching at someone's reaction. It brings up all this anger, all this fear, all this
Emotion.
anxiety, emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. Like how on last week's episode with Richard, how he brought up in the movie Black Klansman, how that last scene or that one scene where the lady said something and he said, I'll never watch the movie again, not because it was bad, because that was a triggering moment in that movie. And I was like, wow, like even something that wasn't even aimed at him still triggered him
Right.
to where he's like, I can't do it. And I completely understand that. I mean, because it echoed what's going on right now, even though that movie took place 40 something years ago. Well, not the actual film itself, but the
Right.
scene of the premise of it took place so long ago, and to see that same thought process is still echoing today was triggering for him. And then and it's crazy because it's like, for me, a movie that triggered me where okay, first of all, I'm not a big crier. I am not a big crier. I'm not a person that like just cries. But if I cry, it's because something like really, really gets to me. And I'll tell you right now, there's one movie I've only seen one time and I will never ever see it again. Not because it was a bad movie, but because it triggered an emotion that I never wanted to get back to again. Best Man's Holiday.
Mm.
Remember the movie The Best Man?
Yeah.
Okay, so then their second one, which was called The Best Man's Holiday. I don't want to give up the movie. I don't want to spoil, even though it's been out for years. So I mean, if you haven't seen it, and I mean, well, that's your bad. But I'll never watch it again. But I'll just say this: A very important character in the movie has cancer and is dying from it. And I'm telling you, when my older brother told me, "Don't watch this movie," it hit me. I was like, yeah, but I'm not much of a cry. I'll be all right. He's like, "Bro, I'm trying to tell you, don't watch this movie." I was like, "Nah, man, I'm gonna watch it." I took my wife to go see it. I'm not gonna lie to you. As soon as like the stuff they start going through all the trials and tribulations. It took me right back to when I was a kid again. It took me, not a kid, but like 18. It took me right back to when my father was sick and dying from cancer.
Mm.
I boo-hooed like a baby in the movie theater, buried my face in my sweater, put on everything, and just bawled super hard in the middle of a theater.
Mm.
So much so where I was wishing I had sunglasses so I could wear them to go out of the theater because I know my eyes was red and puffy.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the most triggering moments that have ever happened to me.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it goes along with something that I've been thinking too, is like not all triggers are obvious. You know what is a trigger for you, but like how does one recognize their own personal triggers? Before it gets to that point, recognize the signs that are coming before it, and all these pathways.
Can you?
I mean, you can. Some research out there shows that you can, and there's ways to kind of navigate it. But
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting because like I was thinking, it brought me to think on like what are my own triggers, and it's not even just the what triggers sadness, but also what triggers anger, what triggers fear, what triggers anxiety, like all these things, these the things that triggering encompasses, like the lengthy way of saying, being easily triggered in moments is being a victim of a deeply unrepresentative and usually painful experience that makes
Mm-hmm.
us panicky or gloomy and unhelpful extrapolations. Basically, is just like another way to say easily triggered. But like thinking about that in general, it helped me dive deeper into one of my triggers. Especially like around Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Mother's Day is hard for me. I don't have my mom in my life, anymore. And so whenever Mother's Day rolls around, I'm always, somber, quiet. I love seeing the love that people have, and then it makes me sad because, I don't get to have that with my mom anymore. And like staying there for just like a moment, I can feel those tiny little changes in my like posture, in my breathing, in my mind, as the trigger starts, as like I know the trigger is coming, or you know um I'm unaware of it. The same thing still happens. It like my breath gets shallow. I start to feel like a lump in my throat. I'll I do this thing where I can hold like uh, 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 a contempt smile, like, oh yeah, I'm happy, like I'm content, like a content smile. Yep. Just put on a mask real quick and just be like, I'm good. I'm listening. I'm loving. But yeah,
You were talking about how you noticed your own trigger. Like you could tell that your your mind, your emotions, and then you start to realize that your physical starts to change.
right.
And like that's crazy that the way that you say that, because it's a holiday that does it to you, right? The
Yeah.
holiday. For me, mine, and I never really noticed it, but my wife is the one who brought it up to me and noticed it. So my father passed away September 21st, 2003. Every year on that day, consciously or unconsciously, my attitude, my mood, everything automatically shifts. And I will wake up in a funk and won't even realize it. Or I'll be
Mm.
acting very funny or weird. And it's like, I will promise you, like, I have no idea. I'm just like, I don't know why I just feel so upset or irritated. And then I'll look and I'm like, what's today? That's what it is. And my wife was like, she was the one that was like, today's the day your dad passed away. And I'm like, yeah. And she was like, oh, that makes sense. And I was like, I never realized that, you know. But it's not Father's Day, right?
Right.
Even though Father's Day, you would think, I mean, like, even though I have this intense burning desire to want to spend time with him, see him, love him, you know, all of that. But the way I have channeled that emotion is poured that into being that father.
Mm.
The love that I'm seeking to want to share with my dad, I share with my daughter as best I possibly can, you know. And then I also have my father-in-law who I try to send that love to. But
Mm.
then also all of my friends and family and everybody else that are fathers, like I try to, as opposed to being making it a day of sadness, I try to brighten other people's day.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. The level of weight that triggers, come with, I can see why when people are triggered by a show or triggered by something someone says,
Mm-hmm.
even why there's such this quick emotional response. And
Yeah.
it's not even a response, it's a reaction,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
um it there was there was this video I was watching by this counselor, Julia Christina.
Mm-hmm.
She was talking about the importance of responding versus reacting, and she was going through the different types of emotional triggers, and kind of bringing to light like all these things that um come with like the beginning stages of your emotional triggers. Like you have this anxiety, the idea that you're feeling gloomy, or you're feeling panicky, or you're coming to these large wild conclusions,
Yeah.
because it's the first thing that you're thinking as you're experiencing this issue, event, etc. And one of the things that she kind of says, like, from when you're trying to recognize your own triggers, it's basically you have to refuse to believe in what is overwhelmingly and rapidly frightening or angering you, or
Yeah.
what have you. um, that's like the first step in recognizing that.
Okay. So now let me throw this at you. Do you think that people choose not to pay attention to their triggers, or the triggers of others?
I'm gonna say yes and no.
Okay.
I say, yeah, people ignore it, their triggers and the triggers of others, because they choose not to. They choose just not to think about it. Like, it's on purpose, because they're there are people who just like are like, you know what? I don't care if you're a soft little snowflake that gets triggered off of everything that I'm saying, thinking, and or doing, you know. Um, so there are those people out there, but then the no is them not doing it on purpose, comes from the fact that they don't even know that they're being triggered in
Mm,
an instance. Um, and I say that because, as I said before, our triggers are basically, it's like we have this inner world, and then we have this outer world.
yeah.
And on the inner world, we have, when we're interacting with the outer world, our inner world takes from our past.
Yeah.
So from our past come these generalizations, and extrapolations, and extreme things that are just going to be going all over the place for people. And it's a past that we don't know is connected to this situation, this experience, this thing. How something that wasn't directed towards Richard was something that triggered him. You
Yeah.
know, it may have been something, a part of him that experienced something similar a long time ago when he was younger, that just stayed with him and is now handling that as an adult.
Yeah.
Oh, 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 oh! It's about that time.
What time is it?
Black-owned beverages time.
Black-owned beverages. All right. So we're going to talk about a new beverage that we both actually decided to consume this evening, as well as to support. And it is a very, very, very great brand. It's called Black is Beautiful. Great stout beer. It is from San Antonio, Texas. And they ship out to over 100 and some odd other breweries in different cities. And I think they're in like 20 countries.
20 countries.
Yeah, they're in about 20 countries, and it's really awesome. I mean, like, I'm not a stout person, but I'm a Black is Beautiful stout person. Like, this is really, really good. It's got some great chocolate notes, nutty, very sweet. Man, it's amazing. I feel like I'm having a coffee without the caffeine.
Yeah, this has been delicious. I mean, from the first moment I opened it and just was like, I'm gonna taste a little just to see. Like, I'm a beer person, I'm a stout person. Like, I enjoy all forms, but the moment I took a sip of this, I was like, ooh, this is delicious. And
Delicious.
delicious. Others others in my house even tried it, and they're not even beer drinkers, and they're like, I will drink this. This is something that's phenomenal, and it's beautiful to see, because like my local brewery too, like the up the street from me,
Mm-hmm.
they're carrying it. They have all these bars and breweries and whatnot participating in this, and I think that's beautiful and
Yeah.
and very powerful too, because we're starting to move in a direction where we can start to dive into Black owned businesses and really and be able to support them as part of the community.
And something else that I noticed is that they are also, a lot of the breweries around, they are donating to organizations, different organizations, charities, and trying to do their part in the movement. And I think that's really beautiful. It's amazing. Clandestine is one of the breweries down here, downtown San Jose Brewing. They're another one. Hapa's Brewing. That's just three in San Jose, and I think
Nice.
there's 4 or 5 of them that hold this beer, and that are also doing their part. So please, if you guys do decide to try it, give it a shot. It's kind of hard to find.
How can you find out if it's being sold at a brewery near you?
Oh, you got to check out their website. The website is blackisbeautiful.beer, and this is it right here. Talks about their relief efforts and what they do, promoting to join the cause. They do 100% donation of the beer proceeds of local foundations that support police brutality reform and legal defense for those who have been wronged. They get to choose their own entity to donate to local organizations that support equality and inclusion and commit to the long-term work of equality. So this is
Beautiful.
so awesome. Like, man, I don't want to read this whole website to you because I think you guys could do it. But I even like the name of their brewing company, which is called Weathered Souls Brewing. It is
that
so dope right there.
that is beautiful.
Yeah. Man, you guys support this. I mean, if you don't drink, or if you're not into this, or if you're not a stout person, get it and just pass it out. And they also have people that are into trading it, whatever. But just try and get this out there. This is for a great cause. And man, like, I love it. I love it. I mean,
The
look at this.
Yeah, it's amazing. The logo is amazing. Like, the beer is amazing. It tastes delicious. Their cause is beautiful.
Oh, they're in over 1,000 breweries. I didn't realize that, in all 50 states
20
and
countries.
20 countries. Wow.
Yep.
Look at that. And you can find your brewery and your state and county right here.
That's amazing. And just a heads up, we are not sponsored by them either. We
Not at all.
have been deciding to take a moment within each of our episodes to kind of highlight Black owned beverages and businesses and whatever we find that's beautiful out there in the world that we feel would be great to support. Because we're we're a Black owned company, and so we feel like paying it forward is the best way to roll through life. And this is one of those ways. It's a great cause, great company, great people, great drink. Yeah, Weathered Soul Brewing Company. Be sure to hop on there and check them out. They're at weatheredsouls.beer. Just hop on their site. You can scroll through and check out the different locations that they might have near you.
And they are in San Antonio, Texas.
Wonderful.
This is Marcus Bakersfield, who's the head brewer, mad scientist, and founder. That's awesome.
And we're back. All right. Silly Omega and Mistah Z. Who else but us? All right. So you had asked me, do people choose not to pay to their own or others' triggers? Like, do you feel that way, or what are your thoughts and feelings on that? Do you feel like
I think people don't know what triggers are. They don't know what that is, so therefore they are indirectly ignorant to it. And I say that because I worked with a student actually this past school year. These were some young ladies who had been through hard times in school, and they are some of the ones that were more troubled, right? They gave a lot of the teachers, a lot of staff found them to be troubling, right? And I'm mainly work with elementary school kids, but I'm really good with the middle school kids, especially because they came from my elementary up through the middle school. So, it's like I have that rapport, and they've always had that rapport with me. I'm coach, that's the cool one. That's the one you could talk to. He's good, whatever. You need to talk to somebody, you really want that real, he's going to give it to you straight. He's going to be real with you. And that's me, I'm that one. And I noticed that this one student was just not about it. You know what I mean? I was like, what's the word? Like, what's the deal? Like, what's wrong with you? I was like, how come every time this certain teacher walks over to you and says something to you, you automatically shut down? Is she your trigger? Because you were cool just a moment ago talking with me, but the moment this person approaches you, says anything towards you or in your direction, I've noticed this because you've done this in front of me on multiple occasions. Like, is this person your trigger? She looked at me and she was like, yeah, she is my trigger. I don't like her. I'm like, well, why don't you like her? She said, because she tries to do too much. She's always all up on my grill, always asking me questions, always trying to find. I'm like, well, I get it. I'm like, and I understand that, but you do realize that happens when somebody cares about you. Maybe the way she does it isn't to your liking, but just understand that you have people here that are genuinely here for you. Like, do you see how my approach is different from her approach? But just understand we're still willing to approach you to help you. I was like, but what I suggest is talk to her and let her know you are a trigger for me. When you do X, Y, and Z, this makes me feel A, B, C. And she was like, I can't do that. I'm a snap on it. I was like, okay, so then why not write a letter? Why don't you write her a letter and state how you feel? So that way you're not looking at her and you're not reading into her response so much deeper than what it really has to be. But you are still able to communicate your feelings and what's going on. And she's at least cognizant of it now, so she can figure out ways to approach you in a different way or to not approach you at all. And she's like, all right, I'll think about that. Now, mind you, like I said, this is the child that people say was so difficult, so hard, and they were like, I don't know what to do, but some people go bend over backwards and make this person be available.
Right.
Days later, I asked her, like every day, but in a cool way, I'd be like, yo, so did you ever make that letter yet? She's like, no, not yet, coach. Like, all right. Kept it pushing. A week goes by. I'm like, did you ever do it yet? She said, I wrote the letter. I just never gave it to her, but I'm going to do it today. I'm like, okay. After she gave it, I was like, how do you feel? She said, I don't know. I guess I feel pretty good because I told somebody how I really felt. And I wasn't mean about it, but I was just straight and let them know. I was like, That's all I can ask you to do. And then there was a change. Like that moment was a change. That was a breakthrough for her to be able to recognize something that was troubling her, talk about it, and then take positive steps forward to make it better or make it so she can move on or move past it and hopefully remedy this issue. And
I'm
then
curious.
COVID hit.
Right. And then they got their wish.
And then
Um,
COVID hit.
well, why wouldn't? Well, I'm curious. Why wouldn't you have given her the advice to just keep her distance, to stay away? Why did you choose the route of finding a way for her to express her feelings and thoughts and emotions towards this individual? Weren't you just like, stay away, just keep your distance, keep up a wall, don't let that person bother you, don't let them break into your inner world. Like, if you feel like they don't exist, then they don't have to exist in your world.
Because it's a person of authority within their life.
Mm.
It's a teacher. So you're going to deal with difficult teachers. You're going to deal with difficult bosses. You're going to deal with difficult everything all the time. If your one and only way to deal with it is to leave and walk away or to avoid it, you will never, ever be able to handle those tough situations, have those tough conversations, especially when you need to. Like, because when you become older and you're at work, your boss could be your trigger, but you need this job. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna walk off the job. Then what are you gonna do then? You can learn different ways to handle it.
I was just gonna say, there's those times though where, if you have a troubling boss or a troubling situation, bringing it up to them can can cost you your job anyways. You'd be like, I have an issue because I don't feel like X, Y, or Z, and it's because you have done this, that, and the other to me, or I felt like this way because of this with you, and that's led
100%.
to like a horrible situation. So I mean, in those moments, in those times, like when those people are the triggers, what.
Well, that first of all, that was a great question and a great scenario that you drew. But I'll tell you this. I'm gonna ask you this. Actually, I won't tell you this. I'll ask you this. How do you feel when you confront a situation, and even if it didn't go your way, at least you know you did the best that you could to remedy it, and you were at least open enough to speak about how you truly felt. How did you feel?
Lighter.
Now, think about how did you feel when you just avoided the situation and you just didn't want to deal with it.
Anxiety stricken.
And that is why I told her to do that. Because, I mean, it's hard to have those tough conversations. It was hard for me to have those tough conversations with my wife. I'll have a tough conversation with other people a little bit easier over my wife because she knows me inside and out. She knows the good sides of me, the bad sides of me, you know, and that's why, because I hold her at such a high esteem, it's hard for me to have those tough conversations. But I'm working on that because I want to feel lighter. Because when I don't have those tough conversations with her, all I'm doing is feeling anxiety stricken.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling burdened, because I avoid that, right?
Right.
Like, that's a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
And as a man, we are not taught how to speak. We're not taught how to
Mm.
talk our feelings out or how to process those things, especially our triggers. We're taught to bury, suppress, compartmentalize, and move on. That's what we're taught. As men, as males in society, we are taught to compress, compartmentalize, bury it away, and move on.
And if you're a female member of society, you're taught to calm down and suppress your emotions, your triggers, your feelings in those situations, because then they're seen as too, quote, crazy, which is dumb, because I'm like, people with emotions having emotional responses isn't crazy.
Yeah,
It's it's them just utilizing the tools and the part of them that existed when they first created it to handle it
yeah.
then.
Or if you think, let's see, let's even dive a little bit deeper. what if we said that we're not taught to clearly communicate those feelings? So all that we ever
Oh,
hear
dude, that's never
is the
accepted.
explosion. Yeah, because it's always so people only see the explosions. They don't see the fuse either being lit
Right.
or the process of what goes up until the explosion, which is a crazy thing.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Crazy.
you see how emotions are received in society. I mean, obviously Kanye is a slightly, imbalanced story, but like he also is somebody with, mental illnesses who's dealing with hard emotions that, need help with, getting through those hard emotions. But still, like instead of you know being like, hey, let's sit down for a moment, let's stop this like campaign, let's stop all this stuff, and like let's sit and talk and like actually figure out what's going on and help you through this hard time that you're going through.
Yeah.
But what was the first thing they did? Was pick up their phones, threw up the cameras, and was like, oh, we better get out here, Kanye's talking about some crazy stuff.
See, and that's very interesting you say that, because I was listening to Andrew Schultz, right? And he has two different podcasts that he does. He has Flagrant Flagrant 2, which he does, and then he also has Brilliant Idiots that he does with Charlamagne the God. Now, on two different podcasts, he talks about the same thing with Kanye, right? And he does more asking questions and probing than giving off his opinion, right? The reason why it was very interesting, and I listened to both of those, two different podcasts with one constant, which is Schultz. Charlamagne the God talks a lot about therapy and mental health and mental illness.
Hmm.
And he talks a lot about anxiety because he obviously talks to therapists. He's been through that, lived through that. And then the other guy, Akash, uh, I don't think he does. I don't know too much about him, right? But to hear their different takes and thought processes on it is very interesting.
Hmm.
And the way that Charlamagne is like really empathetic to Kanye West in the sense of his rants and raves and everything else, and the process. And I'm not saying that Akash is not, but just Akash understands, or I believe he knows somebody that knows more about what Kanye is going through on a daily basis. Whereas, and he brought up and Flagrant, they brought up a great point of we only see the big explosion, but
Yeah.
we don't see the little explosions that are happening that are leading up to this one big one. And we keep magnifying it because he's having a lot of different episodes,
Mm-hmm.
but we only pay attention to the season finale.
It's crazy because I wonder what's triggering those for him.
Well, they were talking about him being empowered by his power, right? I believe that's what they were saying, being empowered by his power. So it's like when he's going through his most manic states is when he has the most creative flow.
Mm.
And like I guess in this most recent one is whatever he was doing with Gap.
Right.
He was working with Gap. So he felt very empowered because, if Kanye's name's attached to it, what's going to happen to those sales?
We're gonna skyrocket.
Skyrocket. So if they make a big announcement where he's a part of it, their money's going to skyrocket, right? So with that type of knowledge, if you feel like, well, I don't need this medicine, I don't need to be on this because I make this happen. Without me, this won't happen. I make this happen. And if you feel so emboldened, what's going to happen? And that makes me think about everything else that we deal with.
Mm. All right. So we were talking about being triggered. What if that makes me think now? Like, what if you're the trigger? Like, what do you do if you're the trigger? in those moments for people for something? Because I
That
know.
is a great question.
I mean, I feel like, we've had episodes where it's triggered certain people, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, like, so what can we do if we're the trigger? I know recognizing that we're triggered, it takes one moment to be like empathetic towards people. It's one thing to be empathetic towards another individual's experience or whatever they're going through. I was having a conversation about a particular show on Netflix, and they were giving their kind of light review of it because someone else was asking about it, and their review of the show wasn't very good. They were talking about how it was this, it was that, it was a third, like, and I couldn't choke down the first episode or even the second episode. I couldn't even get past that, and like, it has this air to it. And I looked at that, and I initially didn't want to be a part of that conversation because I was just like, oh, I liked the show. Like, I felt weird for liking it because I didn't get triggered the same way they did, even though I don't like the same things. You
Yeah.
know, they were triggered by that something. So then I had to take that moment to be like, all right, let me be empathetic towards this person. But in that same right of me being empathetic towards them, it allowed me to be empathetic towards me and my reasonings for enjoying the show. So
Mm-hmm.
and like, it kind of is what sparked this conversation, because they were triggered by it, and then they just stopped. So I had to be like, all right, I'm being empathetic. I can understand that this is a really hard topic. Those are not good things. I am all in agreement with them on that. But it just caused them to stop. Just caused them to stop watching it, stop being involved with it. And I had continued through and watched the rest of it, and I was like, oh, this has nothing to do with what you thought. But I still, like, I had to come from the place of, all right, if I made this, and like, because like, I'm making shows and things like that. Plug, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Um, like, I have to be conscious of that, like, of being that trigger of like,
Yeah.
do I step out? If I make the wrong move, do I step out and apologize for it? I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it goes back to what we were talking about in cancel culture, is like, how do you redeem yourself? Like, how do you redeem yourself from that? Like, how do you handle being the trigger for someone? And I feel like that's speaking out and admitting when you were, it may not be admitting you were wrong, but saying like, I understand that this hurt X amount of people or hurt this demographic of individuals, and I'm sorry for that. That's not the intention. And
Acknowledging your part.
yeah, acknowledging your part in it and being able to and keep going forward with that knowledge to not try and trigger that same group of people again. Like, if you're being canceled for some inflammatory thing you said on your podcast, like, what do you do then?
But something else, though, I'm sorry to cut you off, and I promise I'm gonna let you finish.
How dare you,
I,
Kanye?
um, everybody's gonna be offended by something. There's too many people on this earth for us not to be offensive to somebody.
Can't make everyone happy.
We cannot, and we're gonna be a trigger to somebody, or hundreds of somebodies, or thousands of somebodies. And I say that not to say just continue triggering people, but just understand that different strokes for different folks, and we're not going to be able to make everybody happy all the time. And I said all that to say this: as long as you acknowledge that you are not for everybody, and you are not intentionally trying to do harm to other people, just keep doing you. Like those act, because think about this: that person who gave their opinion about that one show, they're all well and good to have that opinion. But do you need to go the extra mile to slander, talk bad, or write the actors in that show to tell them how you felt?
Yeah,
To make them feel terrible for doing their job
people do
of
it.
acting.
people do it.
Well,
Like,
I get it, but they're playing a character.
right.
That's not them, but that is their character. So you're going to assassinate them for playing a character, for playing a make-believe person. And that's what I'm getting at is like, it's like you got to also understand that there's a line that doesn't need to be crossed. Be upset at their art because it invoked a certain emotion.
Isn't that what art is
It's
for?
objective,
That's,
subjective.
like the way we
Mm-hmm.
like things is by the emotional response that it triggers within us, whether that's laughter, joy, sadness, fear,
Yeah.
anger. Like, it's a catalyst for you to be like, oh my god, I can't believe that. You know what, I'm gonna post this on my story and I'm gonna say why I don't like this show, and now you just brought attention to it. And like, now other people who are like, wait, what, this is bad, like they hop right into it and they're like, oh, this is not that bad. Like, or they might agree, they're like, yeah, this was a horrible thing that they did and said on this show,
Yeah.
and etc. And so, well, I know we said that like it comes these triggers and things are based off of our past experiences in our lives, but like, does it go further than that?
Yeah, I feel like it's that the triggers can be genetically passed down.
Ooh, that makes me think of like the situation that we're kind of having right now with the Black Lives Matter movement. But like, I don't know, expand.
Okay, so let's just talk about that genetical transition of the triggers, right? So we may not have, like I said, I did my research. So today you'll actually see I'm actually flexing my brain a little bit. From Lab Roots, they did an article called "Can We Inherit PTSD from Our Parents? Genetics and Genomics." What they said was, in regards to triggers and them being genetically passed down, is we may not have experienced trauma ourselves. We may have inherited certain markers from our parents, which leave us more susceptible to certain traits, from fear to depression and PTSD, right? And I say that because that reminded me of an actual incident that happened to me when I was younger, right? So I was in Florida. I was at the US Open NASCA tournament with this North American Sport Karate Association tournament. And it was my first time out there. And they were doing weapons forms. So they were doing creative techniques with weapons in martial arts. And we compete, right? So this person used a whip. Now, mind you, I was very far away from them. I heard everybody going crazy, whoa, and then I heard this loud crack. I was like, oh, and I literally dropped down, ducked, and was looking around like, what was that? And I heard crack, 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 and it was a part of their form. They were whipping, they were hitting the whip, and it was a part of their form. I had this tingling sensation running down my back. I just felt fear in an instant. I've never been in slavery. I've never been hit with a whip. I got taught by a belt. I've watched a media get a good beating from a belt, but I have never in my entire life ever felt the crack of a whip, seen a whip in person. I've only heard them in movies and television and read about them in books.
Mm.
And I had this innate fear that came over me at the sound of a whip. And I was like, man, like, why? Well, now reading this and have been through school and learned about things, I'm like, my ancestors felt that same fear, except they felt the pain. And it is now in my DNA to know that feeling.
Yeah. Something that happened generations ago still sits within our DNA, because I mean, essentially that's what our DNA, it's an encyclopedia of our ancestry. It houses all the memories and feelings and emotions and etc. Of our ancestors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it kind of makes me think about this movement and kind of like the feeling of like, oh, I just can't let this keep going any longer. That I need to stand up, I need to fight, I need to be out there. It felt like 400 years of people, like 400 years of ancestors, angry, sad, scared, afraid, that don't want to feel those feelings any longer. That it felt like it was a trigger that just screamed fight, which, I mean, it wasn't necessarily like get out there and throw some hands.
Try Jesus.
Don't try
Don't try me. Cause I throw hands.
But like real, like the feeling was real. The fear of what had happened before. If that's true, then I mean, other people can be triggered the other direction. Those who are not black can be triggered by by racism to stand against it or stand for it, as we've seen happen in our current climate. And it's I mean, the more you learn about triggers, the more we've dove into it. Like, it's just frightening to know that, like, people are triggered in all different directions, and that it's possible for them to reach those levels of hate, fear, disgust, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so here's my question to you. Do you think when to recognize, know, or have processed these, do you think you have the ability to push through your triggers and evolve?
I mean, I feel like with tools you can work around, you can work with and through the triggers and evolve, but I don't know, like if you get triggered by something and you're watching a show and you don't like what's happening on it, do you just stop? Do you just stop watching the show? Do you just not finish it?
I can't. I'm a completer. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have to finish the show or I have to finish the season. Like, that's just me.
Well, yeah, I'm right. Like, I don't know. For me, like, if it's something that I feel personally is like triggering me in some way, shape, or form, I have stopped a show. Like, I have. Let me back up a little bit. Watchmen, the HBO series that just came out. The first episode, what happens? It's the Tulsa Massacre.
Tulsa, yep, that was hard.
Yeah. Oh man,
Hard.
yeah. Hard to watch. Heavy as fuck. Like, but really, because like I had to stop it because that was like, whew, it felt like we're months away from something like that happening. It had that kind of air to it and the kind of triggering feeling and fear that ignited within my body. But I may have stopped it, but I didn't stop it for good. I stopped it and left it there for a time for me to process what I knew I was going to get myself into, and then to finish it. Like, I had to prep myself to finish it. And so I did, because I felt like if it was something that was strong enough to trigger me, that means that there's something valuable on that other side, for it. Because I feel like if you stop, I feel like, yeah, if you just stop at what's triggering you, you don't get to learn what's underneath. One of the big things and premises of our show, obviously, we're called Have the Drink Podcast, and we take a drink whenever, something heavy is happening. But also, the purpose of the show is to get you to think, to get you to think, to get you to think about not just the surface level issue that's going on or the topic that we're talking about, but what the hell's going on underneath? What's happening underneath it all? And like, that's hard to do. But to answer your question on, like, is it possible to push past it enough to evolve? Yeah, there's ways to grow from it.
Yeah.
One of the things I came across also from Julia Christina on her YouTube channel, actually, very informative. She was talking about this process that she uses with her clients, which is called breath. And basically, it's an acronym. The B stands for breathe. You stop and take a breath. Like in that moment, take a breath. Whatever's triggering you, breathe. And then R, reflect. Ask what brought this feeling on. Like, why am I feeling like what brought on this fear? What brought on this anger? And really take some time to like dive into it with yourself. And to try and understand that, try to understand what that past experience is that you have no idea about, that's, controlling you. Empathy, where you're not just empathetic for others but for yourself, because in that time too, you kind of have to forgive yourself and be gentle with yourself for not knowing that was a trigger, but then for being triggered, because sometimes being triggered can feel jarring, because you're also the trigger response is a reaction, so you're reacting, and sometimes that reaction isn't gonna be good. It's not going to be, I mean, a lot of times it isn't good. Like it's not gonna be healthy or conducive to the situation. you know so being able to take that time to be empathetic with yourself and forgive yourself. And then the next one is approach. And it basically, approach, ask yourself how you want to best approach this situation. How do you want to handle this? Do you want to go talk to somebody about what triggered you? Do you want to talk to the person about what triggered you? Do you want to figure out a way that you can kind of bridge the gap between you and this individual? Like taking that time to figure out what your approach is to healing that side. Next part being telling. So telling the person what you're feeling and going through. And it's kind of funny because like this all reflects something that you had said earlier when you were talking about a particular student of yours that was having issues with an authority figure. Like you took this approach, and I thought that was interesting, because you mentored or coached. You were able to you mentoring that individual into doing this process. The last part being help. H, figuring out the kind of help you'll need that will help you get through this, and then being able to pass that on, depending on whatever it is. I feel like the basis of people being triggered, though, is just people wanting to be heard and understood. Because a lot of arguments that go on, a lot of things that are happening when they're angry and upset, and they're like yelling and screaming or just like spewing their side at someone. It's their desperate plea and cry to be heard and understood, because it's one thing to just hear someone yelling at you. It's a whole other thing to understand what they're saying in that moment. Because the only way to get through a difference is through understanding.
Right?
No, I was just thinking about like just all the layers to this, all the layers to triggers, all the layers to humans in general.
Let me, hopefully you're good with this, but this subject and then watching this all transpire, it took me back to when we were on tour, actually. And I was doing homework. You remember what I'm talking about now, don't you?
Yes,
when I was listening to that TED Talk. And how that triggered some deep emotions within you. And you reached out and you talked to me about it. And we did a whole lot. Like, I wish we had this idea long ago while we were on tour 2 years ago, because we could have documented so much stuff in conversations on tour.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, I just, that was a moment where you did All of that. You went through breathe. Once we talked about that, you opened up and we were getting ready for dinner. You literally went through that whole thing you just talked about.
And coming out of that other side, I felt stronger for it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like it. I have to also chalk that up to the space that you were able to hold for me, because when someone is triggered, holding a space for them is hard sometimes, because that it triggers sometimes us, like it
Yeah,
triggers
yeah,
your
yeah.
own emotions, and you're like, oh shit, I am either uncomfortable, I am feeling anxiety, or I am now sad, huh, or irritated, whatever you grow with. um and like, and so like you had a great way of holding space for that too. So I thank you and I applaud you for that, because that's hard to do in situations that involve extreme emotion.
I appreciate that. I mean, we all need a big brother or a big sister. We all need that person that allows us that space. And it's important. And I appreciate you being that person to have allowed me that space when I've needed it. And I feel like that's our relationship. You know, we've always been that way. And I think that's been great. That's why we are the way we are. That's how close we are and everything. You know what I mean? And that's important that we're able to do that. So and I also want to say I applaud you and I thank you for being open enough and allowing me to be there for you in that moment, as opposed to how some people just, like I said, what most men do, which is what?
Stuff it
Just
away.
stuff it away, you know?
It takes really working with the adult brain versus working with your child brain,
Yeah.
you know, because I feel like it's a very child brain thing to do, to push it off.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I mean, I feel like it'd be great for us to acknowledge like all parts. You know, it's important to remember, you got to acknowledge all parts, and adopt, like, especially when dealing with triggers, you know, to adopt a robust um suspicion of your first reaction to
Yeah.
a situation, an issue, a problem. Just because, you know, we never know if we could be dealing with that generational past trauma, personal past trauma, you know, personal past experiences, or just past experiences in general. Um,
True. True.
uh, and there's something to be said about turning your weaknesses into strengths. And I feel like taking that breath, you know, going through breathe, is doing that, is taking your weakness and making it your strength, of saying, I feel this, and so I'm going to take action about it in the way of addressing it. I'm going to address it to somebody, address it directly to the person, I'm going to address it within myself, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to grow. I feel like that's a really important thing.
I agree. Can you send that to me? Actually, you know what I would like you to do? Uh, on top of sending it to me, is let's put it in our Discord.
Absolutely, we'll
We
throw
should
this
definitely
into
put
our
that in a
Discord.
Discord. And speaking about our Discord, I just want to give a shout out to our new Patreon person, Aaron Yip. I want to say thank you for your patronage and welcome to the bar. And we appreciate you, my friend. And please enjoy this great new content that we're putting out there. Much love to you guys, and congratulations on the baby on the way.
Oh yes, congratulations, and yes, thank you very much for your patronage of the show. This is we we wouldn't be able to continue doing this. We wouldn't be able to invite more people on and create more of a dynamic show without your guys' support. And if you guys want to join in this conversation further, like outside of our cast, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at Have a Drink Cast, and don't forget to use the hashtag HADcast. Also, our link for the Discord will be in the description.
Sounds good. All right,
Perfect.
man. This was a great conversation.
It was. I I really appreciate, you know, this ability to have this kind of dialogue. It's eye opening.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's
I
awesome.
I want to leave us out like on a question and then a quote.
I love it.
This is a question for everyone listening at home that I would love for you guys to comment on our posts on Instagram, to comment on Twitter, to tag us, or even to go into our Discord and answer as well. But my question is, what has triggered you the most in your life, and how have you worked to overcome that trigger?
That was our top shelf question of the night, of the episode. Top shelf question of the episode.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to find out our answers, you'll have to join our Discord so that we could talk about it.
Yes, and we'll put the question in our Discord too.
Yeah, that's where it's going to be. We have a special section where you'll see our questions that we pose after each show. We'll throw them into there, and yeah, just trying to start a dialogue, trying to start a conversation, keep it going. Thank you guys for joining us and sitting at the bar and listening to your two bartenders yak all night. And for the quote, I don't have the name of the individual who said this, but the quote is, "I did not exist. I was born, I existed, I lived, I died, I no longer exist, I do not mind." So on that note, I implore y'all to raise your glasses. I appreciate y'all, and I want to thank you for joining us on another successful episode of the Have a Drink podcast, and we invite you back to come sit, think, and have a drink. That's been us. Peace.
Peace.